to order the meeting of Community Board 5. I'm Vicki Barbero, the chair. I'll start the evening with the public session. First, the electeds or their representatives. Wow, this is loud.
Oh, I can make it louder, maybe a little
Yeah.
louder.
Calling you up 3 at a time to speak for 2 minutes each, starting with Justin Flagg. I think it's Lori H.
Yeah.
And Rosie Mendez. Layla, do you have?
Hello, I'm Justin Flagg from Senator Liz Kruger's office. It has been a very exciting start to the session in Albany. I'm sure you've read some about it. Last week we elected the first woman majority leader of the state Senate, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, which was very exciting. This week, on Monday, we passed a package of voting reforms to increase access to voting for New Yorkers, early voting, same-day registration, pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds. I'm going to get closer to this so that it doesn't do that, if that's all right. Consolidated primaries, no excuse absentee voting, and we finally closed the LLC campaign finance loophole that had allowed people to essentially make unlimited contributions to candidates. So those are some huge steps. That was Monday. Tuesday, we passed, thanks to Senator Hoylman's leadership, the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act to protect transgender people and a ban on so-called gay conversion therapy. That was Tuesday. We also, thank you. And next week, we are confident that we're going to pass the Reproductive Health Act and codify Roe v. Wade into state law. So we're starting with the low-hanging fruit, and then we'll get to some of the more complex issues. Speaking of the more complex issues, Wednesday also was the governor announcing his executive budget proposal. That's the first step in the state budget process. Senator Kruger is now the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, so she will be running the joint hearings with the Assembly for the next few weeks on the budget. We'll be hearing from state agencies and experts and advocates on the budget. You can read our community bulletin in the back for more info. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, so these are important things too. I'm Lori Harjo-Irogo from Speaker Johnson's office. I just want to let everybody know that the application deadline for the New York City kindergarten has been extended through January 22nd. If you haven't applied yet, you can try using the New School Explorer, which is created by the Speaker's data team. I just took Luke for a little exploration of it, and it's terrific. If you open it up on your phone, it's on the opening page of the New York City Council. The fiscal year 2020 discretionary funding expense applications filing period is now open. All not-for-profit community-based organizations that wish to apply for discretionary funding for 2020 must submit a council application. The application is posted on the council's website, and the submission deadline will be Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. If you don't make that deadline, you won't be considered for this year. And also, the 13th Precinct is holding the Build-A-Block at the Clinton School at 10 East 15th Street. Doors open at 6:30. It begins at 7. You can meet your NCOs. And the date, I believe, is January 31st. Your NCOs will be there, and as you know, they are the people that are assigned to the same area day after day and get to know the neighborhood. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. February 24th, Sunday, the borough president is having her State of the Borough. There's a bunch of these in the back. Do hope that you can come. It will be at the NYU Skirball Center. Doors open at 1, and then the presentation's at 2. She will be there. She'll do some talking, but we'll have a lot of experts talking about all urban issues. In the back also is our testimony on the 270 Park Avenue and the text amendment. So there's about 25 copies. She always insists we bring hard copies. The other thing in February, the next borough board meeting will deal with some logistical stuff, and we'll have our meeting in the beginning, but then it will become a public hearing on the budget. And we're asking the borough, every community board to come to the borough board meeting after giving their updates to talk about their budget priorities. All of this also depends on when the mayor releases the preliminary budget. Supposed to be done at the beginning of February, end of January, might be in the middle of February, who knows when. We are sure that we will be able to hold the budget hearing. He might do it a few days before, but we'll be able to have some conversation on this, and we'll be doing a presentation. The other thing I want to let you know is community board applications. We are seeking new applicants, and there are a couple of vacancies on this board. So if you know anyone, please let them know that they should apply. They can go online. I will also be going to tenant association meeting, co-op meetings, school meetings, wherever, to make presentations on the community board. And if you know of any upcoming meeting and want to invite me to go there and present, I will like to do that. Also, if you haven't signed up, we are doing the community board leadership trainings, starting in the middle of, starting at the end of January to the end of February. So we've already gotten a good response. Please sign up. A lot of different trainings, budget, land use, advanced land use, you name it, we have a training for it, and if we don't, let us know. We will create one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I said it this morning, Rosie, I'm going to say it again. Thank you, Gail, for that, for her response on 270 Park Avenue. We all were absolutely blown away. It was so perfect. Thank her again.
She was delighted. I know our land use staff went through several drafts and wanted to make sure we captured everything. And of course, this board was very great with its questions and the issues raised, and we tried to make sure we incorporated
'em.
everything.
You got
So
'em.
thank you.
Again. Okay, next three, Kevin Jean-Baptiste, Abigail Bessler, and Jeremy Unger.
Good evening, Community Board 5. Happy New Year. My name is Kevin Jean-Baptiste from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And I'm just going to touch very briefly on a few things that happened last year, as well as things that we're focusing more on this year. Last year, we were proud to announce that we have actually cut the number of prosecutions in our office by more than 50%. For when District Attorney Vance first came into office, we were prosecuting over 90,000 prosecutions as a whole, which included minor violations, infractions, and misdemeanors, and we've reduced that to 44,050 prosecutions in 2018. And that's with the new initiatives of no longer prosecuting low-level marijuana offenses, fair beating, and then various others that we're looking to kind of move in a more progressive direction. For this year, though, we are looking to actually spread more knowledge on our Manhattan Construction Task Force, which I left some flyers in the back, having more time and more resources to allocate to more serious crimes. Construction is something that is obviously very prevalent in Manhattan and sometimes present very unsafe working conditions for the workers and for people around the construction site. So we had actually last week or 2 weeks ago have folks present at the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 5, and we're also doing outreach throughout the other community boards in Manhattan. And we have a text message WhatsApp that would allow workers to feel more safe to text anonymously if there's an unsafe working condition because of the fear of retaliation or retribution from their employers. So that flyer is in the back. Please feel free to spread the knowledge and grab one on your way out. And I also wanted to announce our 2019 high school internship program, which is getting ready to launch February 11th, 2019. and the application process ends March 11, 2019. Feel free to grab one of those flyers as well. It's for high school interns, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, which comes with a $175 weekly stipend. So please feel free to take those information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Abigail Bessler from Councilmember Keith Powers' office. It's great to see all of you again. Happy New Year, if I can still say that. Last month, the councilmember hosted a town hall with the mayor that many of you were there for, and it was exciting to see all of you. During the evening, we heard concerns about affordable housing, overdevelopment, school admissions, L-train construction, and much more. In the coming weeks, we'll be following up with the mayor on these concerns, and please continue to reach out to me personally as well. And I'll let Jeremy talk about the L train. Okay, next week, Councilmember Powers will be introducing 2 pieces of legislation related to the commercial rent tax. One that would increase the thresholds for businesses to get relief from the tax, or rather, have more businesses get relief, and the other that would exempt billboards in the theater district from the tax. He aims to provide further relief for businesses in Manhattan that are required to pay this tax, and I'll keep you updated on the bills, but they would help many businesses in CB5. And finally, the council member also looks forward to working with the state. We've heard a great update today, ranging from rent regulation to MTA operations. This year, the state's rent stabilization laws are up for renewal, and it presents an important opportunity that the council member believes he can advocate for to close loopholes and MCI increases, prohibit preferential rents, and eliminate vacancy decontrol. He is confident that 2019 will be a year of progress on important issues across the board. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeremy Unger. I'm from Councilwoman Carlina Rivera's office. First off, I just want to say thank you to Wally and Luke and Vicky for sponsoring our District 2 resource fair that we had last night. We had a really fantastic turnout. A lot of great organizations came in. Again, if you guys ever have any issues with anything in your homes and your streets, your residents, we always encourage you to contact our office. We'll be holding more resource fairs in the future to help connect residents with agencies and organizations, person to person, try and cut down on some of that bureaucracy. Another news, as Abigail mentioned, obviously I think a lot of us are concerned about what is happening with the L train. We heard about the governor's new plan for the repairs involving the closure of one tube on nights and weekends. I think the council member, as well as some of our other elected officials, are still very concerned and have a lot of questions about what this new plan is actually going to look like, and ensuring that an independent analysis of the plan is actually completed. We sent a letter to New York City Transit President Andy Byford and have asked some questions about this in person, and we hope to have updates from the MTA and DOT within the next week or so to share with you guys. But right now I would say sit tight on new updates, and I would really stress this plan is not settled one way or another. We really need to get a lot more information about it before we can be talking about next steps. In addition, the other things I just wanted to mention briefly is that last month, the Women's Caucus of the City Council, which Councilwoman Rivera is the chair of, appointed its first ever executive director. Her name is Julie Kim. She is a lifelong New Yorker. We fought last year to get funding for an executive director for the first time, and it's really going to enable the Women's Caucus to advocate for more women's issues in New York City, including on street harassment and other issues. If you have any issues that you particularly are concerned about as it relates to the rights of women, in New York City, please contact our office. We welcome ideas from all constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and from the public, we have one person, Benita Berkowitz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Benita Berkowitz. I live at 7 East 14th Street. It's on the north side of 14th Street between Union Square West and 5th Avenue on the southern border of this community board. I want to speak to you about the changes that have taken place on 14th Street during the past few weeks. 14th Street between 3rd Avenue traveling west past Union Square is now entirely painted red, indicating it's a bus-only street. This means that no private vehicle can enter 14th Street and travel west across town. Union Square West was blocked off from all traffic by planters and signs that no vehicles, except bicycles, can access the street between 15th Street and 14th Street as of last week. This eliminates all access to 14th Street from the north. The building I live in, which has nearly 500 units and 1,200 residents, is on the north side of 14th Street. It will only be accessible by foot once the bus-only lanes are enforced. It does not have any other entrance to any other street. The bus stop on the block on this side of the street is planned to be eliminated. Even Fifth Avenue access is blocked since the east side of Fifth Avenue is a bike lane. The public garage in my building will not be accessible. The stores on my block will not be able to receive deliveries. I wonder how garbage will be picked up and how will snow will be removed. These changes seem to have come about by executive fiat. I requested assistance from my elected officials, and everyone from the governor's office on down have all recommended I work through my local community board. That's you. I ask you all to see if you can intercede to request that some accommodation be made to keep the block viable and the building habitable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's funny, I was going to recommend that you work through your council member and the DOT. Yeah, okay. Pardon? Okay, we now move into our business session of the board. This is when the board deliberates and only the board. No one from outside of our membership is allowed to speak unless recognized by the chair.
Luke.
What? Okay. So we now move into the business session, and we'll start with the adoption of the December minutes. May I have a motion to approve? So moved. And a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Wally?
Akalis. Yes. Athanael.
Yes.
Feichman.
Yes.
Benzie.
Yes.
Chu. Yes. Clark.
Yes.
Cook. Yes. Dale.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Gaho. Yes. Goldberg.
Yes.
Gashow.
Yes.
Greeley.
Yes.
Haas.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Heyer.
Yes.
Isaacs. Kabak.
Yes.
Kaliforski.
Yes.
Kazadar.
Yes.
Kinsella.
Yes.
Wagasico.
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Lusick.
Yes.
Mann.
Yes.
Nicole.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Raybar.
Yes.
Sadler.
Yes.
Shapiro.
Yes.
Slutskin.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Webb.
Yes.
Weintraub.
Yes.
Okay, the minutes pass. The chair's report tonight, I would like to invite the chair of our Public Safety Quality of Life Committee, Nick Athanael, up for a report. Nick?
Thank you, Vicki. Tonight, we have a guest from the 13th Precinct. Before I introduce him, I wanted to give you an update on one of the problem venues in our district that the police have been working on. It's called the Jewland Club. It's at 49 West 20th Street, which is the former Limelight space for anyone who remembers that. Clayton and Candy for sure. They came to us a few years ago for a restaurant liquor license. They were operating under the radar for a while. Then they started having private parties and events that became problematic. They could not control their clientele. We called them in. We had meetings between the operator and the public. We did a number of things which included a meeting on December 19th to talk about an incident that had occurred just recently before. There was a big fight out on the street. There police were called in, and the place was completely out of control. We met with residents, the elected officials, all participated. Community Board 5 assembled this group that included the State Liquor Authority, and through that effort, the police agreed to station a squad car in front of the premises. 1 week later, there was another fight in front of the space, and the police shut the venue down. That was on New Year's Eve. And I wanted to invite Officer Considine up to give us an update on what's been going on since, and to thank him for the attention that he's given this venue.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Officer John Considine from the 13th Precinct Community Affairs. I'm usually in a suit and tie. We have a lot of stuff going on, quiet life-wise. So basically, a lot of us are walking the area, handling a few things. So that's why I'm not a little more dressed up. But I noticed I had cameras here, so I'm a little nervous now. I just wanted to at least come in and reintroduce myself. I do know a lot of faces in the room, and some people that aren't familiar with us. I'll just give you 2 seconds on the 13th Precinct. We're on the east side, 21st Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. We go from the basically East River to 7th Avenue, east side, 14th Street up to 30th, basically, just to square it as much as I can. Right now with Julan, we had them in the meeting in the precinct with Inspector Hellman. We made some suggestions. Now I can't speak on all the terms of the liquor license as far as the restaurant. We're just looking at what we can enforce and how we can help from the community complaints we've received, and the communication has been great between us and the community board. So we had them in the office. We made some suggestions on security, updating cameras, lighting. You have to also police your inside as much as your outside. And it's also, you also at sometimes are going to stick out a little more when you're the only game in town on a Sunday, and a lot of the stuff is spilling out into the street. So we're very aware of the situation. They did update the security. They got cameras. They had a few things going on. The last incident that was there, I spoke to Luke from the community board about it as well. Officer Demery and Officer Vera are our NCOs. We're fortunate because Officer Demery has done midnights for the last 11 years, so he's very, very familiar with the rules and regulations, and he also has a good relationship with the SLA. So as far as we know right now, there wasn't any arrests made. I can't say it was a physical fight on the street, but Officer Demery did go back in, speak to management. It was an issue on the street with the crowd, and they were shut down for the night. It's something that's going to continue to be monitored, and that's kind of where we stand right now. It's as soon as we made suggestions, they were compliant on that end. Okay, and I don't know what that means to stipulations as far as the liquor license are, but what the suggestions that we made, to at least go from now, especially on Sundays with their problematic brunches, we're going to keep monitoring the situation, and that's what we can do for right now. Okay, and just for 2 quick seconds, if everyone's not familiar with our NCO program, our website has all of our build-a-block meetings, our community board meetings. Everything is on the NYPD 13 Precinct website. I suggest everyone just go home tonight, just take 2 seconds to look at it. We're covering everything from conditions on 16th Street to quality of life, and it's just a lot of information is on that website. All right, so please look into that, find out who your officers are for the neighborhood. Their phone numbers are on there. Not their home addresses, but everything else is on there. It's a lot more of an open communication line. Personal, job cell phones, emails, everything is right there. Reach out to them. We kind of use them as smaller teams that get back to us, and so far we're seeing success. We just started back in October, so it's still a little bit of a learning curve, but we're in the right direction. All right. All right. Any questions?
So yeah, I want to explain the NCO program has been very helpful to us because it's given us a direct contact. It's given us someone who's dedicated to coordinating with the community. And because we don't usually have access directly to the officers, but these NCOs, neighborhood coordinating officers, their purpose is to assist the community board and the community directly. And I want to thank the police because stationing the squad car is enabling us to catch the disturbances when they happen. In the past, when there have been issues, there have been fights and whatever happened. By the time that the police arrive, that's dispersed. No one is making complaints. Even when people get taken to the hospital, and that has happened in the situation, they refuse to press charges. So if the police are not there to witness it personally, there's no report, there's no evidence, there's no nothing that can be turned over to the state liquor authority to enforce the SLA rules against venues like this. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks, I
very
appreciate
much.
it. All right, thank you.
Okay. I believe we have our state senator, Brad Hoylman, here this evening with lots of good news.
Nice to see everyone. Happy New Year. State Senator Brad Hoylman, reporting from Albany, and with some good news for a change. You know, the legislative session began last week, but this week we, I think a lot of us as New Yorkers stood in long lines during this past election, and we addressed those right away. We passed a package of bills that would extend our democracy. We passed a bill to allow early voting for the first time in New York State. That was extraordinary because there are millions of Americans who vote early in every election, but not a single New Yorker, so we're going to be doing that soon. We consolidated our state and federal primaries. You know, we've had these two primary dates, so they will both be in June. We closed that thing called the LLC loophole, which has allowed LLC companies, which typically are real estate entities, to create multiple mechanisms to contribute to candidates, basically circumventing our entire campaign finance system. We passed the first step of a constitutional amendment to allow same-day voter registration in the state of New York. We also passed another step toward a constitutional amendment to permit no excuse absentee voting. So no longer will you have to give an excuse and say you're at work or had childcare duties, and hopefully that'll lead to voting by mail, which we should have in the state of New York. We also passed a bill that would permit automatic voter registration transfers. So if you live in one part of the state and move to another, your registration is portable. It moves with you. And then finally, we passed a bill that would allow pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-olds. So when you get your license for your car, you can register to vote, and when you turn 18, you'll be able to go to the polls. So we think all of these steps will allow more people to vote. And what's so exciting about that is not only did we look at the democracy side of government, but we looked at the human rights side. And that was day 2 of our legislative session, in 2 bills that I have sponsored for years passed the state Senate for the first time. In fact, they were voted on in the state Senate for the first time. The first is called the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act. Thank you. That's New York's transgender human rights law. For many years, since 2002, transgender individuals and those gender non-conforming New Yorkers have been excluded from our human rights law. So according to statute, they could be fired from their job, kicked out of a restaurant, or denied a lease for their apartment just because they were transgender or gender non-conforming. We fixed that finally, so that was big news. And then secondly, we passed a bill that would ban what's known as LGBTQ conversion therapy. Basically, we're not going to allow, thank you, not going to allow state licensed therapists to try to convert gay kids into being straight. As you can imagine how damaging that is to the psyche of young people, and the consumer fraud that is perpetrated on parents and families is astounding. So we're going to put an end to it with that legislation. So that's very exciting. First week in Albany, I have to give credit to Andrew Stewart Cousins, the leader of the Senate, who's from Westchester County, Yonkers specifically, and who really wanted to come out of the gate with a package of bills that showed a new direction for the Senate and hopefully for the state. So thank you for having me. Look forward to to working with the board on a whole host of issues, including the L train. There was news just out moments ago that the MTA says they're proceeding with the non-closure plan, which seems on the surface to be good news, but we have a lot of questions, I think, as elected officials and as community boards as to the safety and efficacy of the new method. But we'll be following that closely and asking a lot of questions, hopefully having a hearing in the state Senate on the issue. And then I wanted to let you know that I've been appointed the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So thank you. So there'll be some very interesting bills going through there, as well as judicial appointments, including a bill that I've been working on for years called the Child Victims Act. I've spoken to you about it before, which would raise the statute of limitations on crimes of child sexual abuse beyond age 23, and also give adult survivors who did not have the chance to go to court because of that statute of limitations and actually seek civil redress. So that will be through the Judiciary Committee, so I'm looking forward to getting that to the floor of the Senate for a vote.
Wonderful.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Okay, that moves us right into our committee reports, starting with Parks and Public Spaces. Clayton. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's the first state Senate report that's made me want to cry in a good way. Okay, we have 3 resolutions that have them deemed read, and let's bundle them.
Okay, bundled.
The first one is an application from Festival LLC, which is otherwise known as Barbunia, a restaurant on Park Avenue South and 20th Street, for an unenclosed sidewalk cafe, 12 tables and 33 chairs. So we unanimously voted to deny this application. A little bit of context, the kind of parent company of this restaurant, Chef Driven LLC, operates L'Express across the street, and you might recall that we have had them in for public hearings for their sidewalk cafe no fewer than 3 times in as many years, I think, and maybe even more than that. And they were very cooperative in that regard, but the reason we called them in so many times is because there's been historically extreme concern about sidewalk cafes on Park Avenue South, just because it's heavily trafficked and the view corridor, and there's just been historically a lot of concern about that stretch of Park Avenue and its appropriateness for sidewalk cafes. That said, L'Express and we worked together, several board members and representatives of the applicant performed multiple pedestrian counts at many different times of day, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole long story about L'Express. In the end, we gave them their sidewalk cafe, limited the number of tables and seats, their operating hours. After a year, they came back asking for their original layout, which was a few more tables. We granted them that, given that there had been no complaints, it was working out, we did further pedestrian counts, blah, blah, blah. All that to say, Barbunia is directly across the street, and it's the same company, so we anticipated that they would anticipate equivalent concern, and they did not. They sent a representative who was not willing or able to make binding decisions on behalf of the applicant or make any revisions to the application, and the site plan was absurdly rife with errors. There were seats placed in the service aisle. There was a service door on one part of the layout, but then the bird's eye view, it wasn't there. In another one, there was a table in front of the service door. There were tables flush up against where the back of the front double doors of the restaurant would open, so that if someone was sitting there, they would get whacked in the back every single time somebody came in or out of the restaurant. The representative of the applicant was not really able to speak to any of these concerns. We asked if he would consider withdrawing the application formally from DCA, because we do not have time on the clock to hear this application again. And since we have to comment, we said, we're going to unanimously deny, but you can always withdraw this application, make revisions, formally resubmit. That extends our window again, and we'll hear this again next month. And the applicant was either unwilling or unable to do that. So we voted unanimously to deny. Since that time, there's been a flurry of emails today where they did, in fact, revise the application that was submitted to DCA, which is something that I didn't know you could do. And they removed the seating that was in the service aisle, but they did not address any of the other concerns. And now looking at the revised plans that they've submitted, there's a couple of real head scratchers. They have some tables that only have chairs on one side of the table, so two people can have a nice side-by-side meal experience together. There's a couple of those, and then there's also one where, to fix the problem where the door was going to whack into the back of the seats, they solved that problem by making the chairs half as deep. That is what I'm looking at. So we wrote back and said, yeah, no, the resolution still stands.
I thought you were going to say they took the backs off the chairs.
So, and most of all, we just couldn't believe they could not have anticipated that we would be concerned about this location. They didn't do any pedestrian counts. They didn't come prepared. So it still stands as unanimous denial. I suppose if we wanted to, and I'm not quite sure what's proper here, I could revise the resolution from here to remove the objection to the seats in the service aisle since it's no longer part of the official application with DCA. I mean,
They are doing that. Is that
it
what
has
you're saying?
been submitted.
Yeah.
The revised plans have
Oh,
been submitted.
okay.
So,
Yeah,
you know, I can revise the resolution to be accurate.
yes,
The rest of the concerns still stand.
okay. All right, are there any conflicts with this application? Are there any questions to the application? Are there any comments? Okay, next resolution.
Next resolution is the roster of programming from Madison Square Park Conservancy for 2019. They come to us every year with their roster of programming. This is not the marketing events that come to us, as always, on a case-by-case basis. These are the free events that are open to the public, as well as the fundraisers that they have every year. They're all listed here. They are almost all the same as last year and the year prior. The changes are all for the public benefit. There are fewer events with amplified sound. Many of the music events no longer take place on a stage, but are now pocket-sized music events that are more like a jazz trio or something acoustic without amplified sound in a smaller corner of the park. They have really been living up to their promise of their new mission statement 2 years ago of less is more with their programming, and we are quite in support of that effort. Also, it should be noted that there is no more Big Apple Barbecue and there is no more Madison Square Eats. We will see if there is a future iteration of a different food vendor type market in Worth Square. That may come before us this year. And of course, they have their 4 marketing events per year that they're entitled to have, and we haven't heard any of those yet this year. So those we expect to come as well. But overall, as far as this roster, we were unanimously in support.
Okay. Are there any conflicts? Are there any questions? Any comments? Yes.
Now, I live in Madison Green, so I don't face the park, but every time I talk to anyone about the community board, they go, what are they going to do about the noise from the park? So I'm very happy to report this back to them, that this will address, I don't know if it will address all the issues, but it has really been a very serious complaint that people have.
Great.
I want to thank them and through you guys as well for helping to do it.
Thank you. Also, one other thing I should mention is that the music events that are still there are being moved to the northern end of the park, so that it's not all the onus of that is on your building.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, next resolution.
The third resolution is an application from Adecco on behalf of Netflix for a marketing event in Bryant Park. This is to be on the Fountain Terrace, adjacent to 6th Avenue up the stairs there. This is the installation of a ginormous umbrella for the delight of the public. It is 86 feet high and 52 feet in diameter. And if it rains, you can stand under it. Also, while you are under it, you can look up and see projections mapped onto the underside of the umbrella, which is a promotional campaign for a new show called Umbrella Something or Other on Netflix. This event is going to kick off on the much beloved family holiday, National Umbrella Day, which is real. It's National Umbrella Day is February 8th or something. I know. How do you not know that? I can't. Maybe we didn't invite Wally to the party. I can't remember. The members of the public will also get free Fluffernutter sandwiches because of the very natural tie between Fluffernutters and umbrellas. There will be 10 brand ambassadors who are going to welcome guests. I'm sorry, I know I'm being very cheeky. The fact of the matter is we put this through our event matrix, which is a guideline that we use to evaluate different types of impact that an event can have. The truth is that in many ways the event actually passed muster according to the matrix. When we added it all up, it was kind of 50-50. But on balance, they were not able to commit to the signage that they had submitted. The signage is the logo of the show, not the logo for Netflix, and it was black and white. We felt it was basically okay, but they were not able to commit that Netflix wouldn't just decide they also wanted an enormous red Netflix logo on the umbrella as well. Given that this is hugely visible from 6th Avenue, as well as obviously inside the park, we just thought their inability to be specific about the signage and a corporate logo was kind of a non-starter for us. And the other major thing is just the duration. It's a week. It's a considerable amount of time. You know, there's not a lot of amplified sound or anything, but it's an enormous thing that's going to be in the way of people who use that space on the terrace to commute and to get in and out of the park and go to work and stuff. So we denied unless those two major components be addressed with further clarification. The applicant has been very communicative with us, but they have still not been able to be specific about either point. So the denial unless stands.
Okay. Are there any conflicts? Any questions? Ina?
Yeah, I'm really glad this was denied, but my question is Bryant Park getting a whole lot of money out of them for this?
I think so.
Because I know they have to support their budget.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up because we did talk about that at length. Unlike Madison Square Park Conservancy, which has a number of events sanctioned to them as part of their contract with the Parks Department, Bryant Park Corporation doesn't have any such exact hammered out agreement, which makes it a little trickier for us because it's just truly case by case. It's always this thing of like, we don't want to have to ask for their books, like how much you're actually getting paid. But we understand that Bryant Park takes $0 from the city of New York. And last year they had no marketing events. Obviously they have Winter Village and they have the HBO, the movie thing and all that standard stuff. So they have revenue from their kiosks and all that stuff. But as far as the individual marketing events that we're used to seeing with these big fat applications, with these events, they didn't have any last year. So that does affect their accounting, and we're aware of that, and we're sensitive to that. And it's one thing that actually led to the deny unless, as opposed to an outright denial, because had they come back and committed to, I think, even a day less, and to commit to not having a red big corporate logo, I think we might have actually even supported this, but that's not how it panned out.
Okay, other questions? Nancy?
Does the applicant get your matrix in advance?
That is a really good question, no. But wait a minute, the due diligence is the communication with the applicant ahead of the committee meeting goes over the details of all the things we asked for. So yes, just not, they don't get the document.
Other questions?
What's that? It is on the website, but you know, who goes to our website other than us?
Any other questions? Any comments?
Do applicants go to our website?
I wanted to know, was it like a big umbrella company that's already in conflict with
sorry.
the city? Is
I'm
that why
sorry.
they're not giving a name like Amazon or
Is this somebody from the public?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, this is the business session of the board.
Oh, only the board.
Yeah, sorry. Any questions from the board members? Any comments? Yes, Nancy?
I think it's great it's on the website. That's the perfect thing.
Yeah. Great, okay. All right, that takes care of all three, and we vote, right?
Weintraub.
Yes.
Webb.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Slutskin.
Yes.
Shapiro.
Yes.
Sandler.
Yes.
Raybar.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
McCall.
Yes.
Mann.
Yes.
Lusick.
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Logasico.
Yes.
Kinsella.
Yes.
Kazner.
Yes.
Kalafarsky.
Yes.
Kabak.
Yes.
Heyer.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Haas.
Yes.
Greeley.
Yes.
Gashow.
Yes.
Goldberg.
Yes.
Gatto.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Chu.
Yes.
Benzie.
Yes.
Weitzman. Athanail.
Yes.
Akalis.
Yes.
Isaac's here.
Oh, he's here, okay. And that's a yes.
Okay, the resolution's passed. We are on to Budget, Education, and City Services with Renee. And before we go there, I just want to mention that anyone from the public who might have questions or comments, please feel free to get in touch with the board office or with our committee chair for any clarification or help, okay? Thank you. Renee,
Hello. We have one resolution. May I deem it read?
so deemed?
Thank you. This initiative came to us from a student at Stuyvesant High School. She came to us, the Director of External Affairs for the Stuyvesant Student Union. And this is a group who is working on the issue of mental illness in schools. They had crafted a request for more resources for schools to provide services to enhance awareness and eliminate stigma around mental illness. They first presented their resolution at a CEC District 2 meeting. It passed, and now they were coming out to community boards, and they came to us. What the resolution was an encouragement for the Department of Education to provide a dedicated funding stream toward a social worker in each New York City elementary, middle, and high school, with a ratio of at least one social worker for every 100 students. It also asked for the Department of Education to engage the District 2 Middle School Leadership Council in further discussion of student mental health and the need for access to adequate mental health literacy and supports. The presentation provided a lot of evidence of the need for this sort of support. I'll just give you some of the facts that were conveyed to us. 8% of New York City high school students have attempted suicide. 13,000 students report feeling depressed each year. Many students do not have consistent access to mental health support, or do they have any adults they feel in their life that they can trust. 50% of mental illnesses begin to develop at age 15, 75% by age 24. And as you can imagine, mental health significantly impacts students' academic, social, and emotional development. One of the things that was spoken about specifically was the pressures in New York City on students to gain admission to schools at all. So at the elementary level, they're fighting to gain admission to middle schools. Middle school, you understand the exams to get into these specialized high schools and all the pressures that entails. Schools do have guidance counselors. Most of them do have, but we questioned this, and she explained that they're focused on admissions and they're focused on peer mediation. They really don't have the resources or the time to deal with mental health issues because they're super busy with all those other things. Our committee was generally very, very supportive of the initiatives that was presented. There were 3 things that we specifically had questions about and changed in the request. The first, we weren't convinced that it had to be a social worker. We thought it would be more appropriate for a mental health worker or a mental health professional, and that would encompass the title of social worker. So we changed that, and you'll see that in our resolution. Secondly, we weren't clear that the ratio of 1 professional to 100 students was the correct one. We don't know what the correct one was. We had due diligence that suggested 1 to every 250 students, but we don't know. So our resolution asks for the cost should be explored for at least 1 mental health, at least for every 250 students. Whatever the correct amount is, we really don't know. And then there was another question about funding and where it comes from and how that works. And we realized that we really don't know how that works in context of a mental health, where that funding stream, that's something that we're investigating now. So our resolution just asked that the DOE explore the cost of providing this dedicated funding stream for mental health. It was a unanimous vote, and everyone.
Thank you. All right. Does anyone have a conflict with this resolution? Are there any questions? Any comments? Ina.
I do just one really quick comment. This is really amazing and wonderful, and I just want to commend and notice that in the final resolve, where you mentioned, in addition to providing adequate mental health services, to provide mental health literacy. And my assumption from reading the rest of it is that's all for administrators and teachers.
That's
And
correct.
also hopefully for students. And the literacy part of it is just as important as the services themselves. And I'm really glad and appreciate that that's in this result.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we will take this to a vote.
McCallis. Athenale. Weichman. Penzi. Chu. Clark.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Dale. Ford. Gatto. Goldberg. Gashow. Greeley. Haas. Harris. Heyer. Isaacs. Kabak. Kaliforski. Kazner. Kinsella. Lagosico.
Yes.
Levy. Lucic.
Yes.
Mann.
Yes.
McCall.
Yes.
Miller. Paulson. Raybar. Sandler. Shapiro. Sludskin. Smith. Webb. Weintraub.
Okay, the resolution passes. We're on to landmarks. Layla.
Okay, so we have one resolution for landmarks. I would like to have it deemed read. Just so you know, we actually initially received 3 applications, and 2 of these applications were withdrawn because they were evaluated at staff level. The Landmarks Preservation Commission actually updated their rules. The rules were voted on, I want to say, a couple of months ago. And they are now in effect, and this trend of seeing less applications come to us is really problematic. It is really of concern because we know, for example, that one particular application that made its way onto our website very briefly until it was removed because the application was withdrawn because the staff was going to deal with it, generated some members of the public attending our meeting in hopes of getting more information. So we know that there is a need for public information, and right now, as the rules are written, this is not available unless these applications are referred to the community board. So I just wanted to, bring this little layer of information before we go to the resolution itself. So the one resolution that was not deemed a staff level material and that did made its way to us is for a building that is located at 17 West 20th Street. This is in the Ladies Mile Historic District. This is between 5th and 6th Avenues. The building is a 6-story commercial building. It was actually built in the 19th century and then altered in 1920. The building has been occupied by residential tenants under various loft law and illegal status. It has been decided by ownership of the building that they're going to revert back to being a fully commercial building, so fully compliant with the zoning. They are altering the ground floor, which is retail, and they decided to make this retail space ADA compliant. The building has basically 2 commercial, small commercial retail stores on each side of the main entrance to the building. So what they're proposing to do is to actually make the entrance into the building ADA compliant. And then from the building lobby, they're creating an entrance into each commercial space. The committee was very appreciative that because they're going that route, that eliminates the need for a ramp. And in the case of this particular building, that it eliminates the need for 2 ramps, given that there are 2 separate retail spaces. So the committee was very appreciative for that approach. We had some issues about the design of the storefront. that they were introducing. They are doing some alterations. There is going to be some historic fabric that will be removed, but we don't have too much concern with that because the storefront is mostly non-historic. But we had concern with the fact that there was a total lack of symmetry and harmony between the proposed storefront and the proportions of the rest of the building. So we did express those concerns, and we were very fortunate that the applicant agreed. They went back to the drawing board, presented a new design that was much more sympathetic to the facade, and we voted to approve it. So it is a unanimous approval.
Okay, thank you. Are there any conflicts to this application? Any questions to the resolution? Any comments? Yes, John.
Yes, I was the lead person on this application. Layla's already gone through the process, what they're asking to do. I'd like to just mention that the ADA applications are often very difficult to deal with, and this is quite the opposite in this case. The applicant was extraordinarily cooperative. At great expense, they're lowering the floor, the ground floor, to get rid of the step. They're moving a door that's necessary to make the lobby ADA compliant and putting it in a different location. As Layla said, they came to us with a design. We were uncomfortable with it. We didn't think it was suitable, appropriate. Within a day, they came back with a new design. So I just wanted to emphasize this is truly a pleasure. It was a win-win too. We could have ended up with 2 ramps on the outside. And they came up with a solution that avoided that. And yes, they did get rid of some original fabric, but they also added some original fabric back. So again, it was just one of those, oftentimes ADA applications can be very frustrating, and this one was quite the opposite. It was truly
Nice feeling,
a
right?
pleasure.
Yeah, and it also sets a very good precedent, and we can, turn other applicants to one way of doing things where, it doesn't have to include a ramp that is very obtrusive, and that very unfortunately, applicants that do install ramps don't really make the effort to design the ramp to be pretty, and which is really very problematic. So we were very pleased with this outcome, and
Great.
it is a feel-good thing when an applicant tells you, yeah, I'm going to follow your recommendation.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, we will take this to a vote.
Akalis.
Yes.
Athanel.
Yes.
Feichman.
Yes.
Benzie.
Yes.
Chu. Clark.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Gatto.
Yes.
Goldberg.
Yes.
Gashow.
Yes.
Greeley.
Yes.
Haas.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Heyer.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Kabak. Yes. Kaliforski.
Yes.
Kazner.
Yes.
Kinsella.
Yes.
Lagasico.
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Lusick.
Yes.
Mann.
Yes.
McCall.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Raybar.
Yes.
Sandler. Shapiro.
Yes.
Slutskin.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Webb.
Yes.
Weintraub.
Yes.
Okay, the resolution passes. Land use, Layla again.
Okay, so before we go to committee report, I just wanted to touch on something that we heard about from the Manhattan District Attorney. So the Land Use Committee received a presentation by the head of the Manhattan Construction Task Force. And it was really interesting, and although the rep for the district attorney spoke about it, I just want to emphasize a couple more aspects that we felt were really interesting. So the assistant DA who is in charge of this program has been able and has been successful with actually bringing charges onto construction companies and contractors in case of incidents that resulted in severe injury or death. And she was able to actually secure convictions because she was able to prove that there was gross negligence and that there was gross disregard for basic safety that resulted in the death of a worker. And the reason why she was able to secure a conviction was because she had evidence. And the reason she had evidence was because someone had taken a photograph, actually a coworker had taken a photograph of the worker who ended up being the victim of this terrible accident in the unsafe condition, like literally an hour before this accident happened. So my understanding is that they're going to visit all the community boards in Manhattan. And what they're asking us is, first of all, they want us to be aware of it. But what they're asking us is, if we do witness a condition, a construction site, and a condition that seems unsafe. So of course, if it is blatantly unsafe, if we see a worker that is up on a scaffolding and is not attached, calling 911 is a must. You don't want to let an unsafe condition that could result in the death of a person unreported. But if you notice a condition that that there are no workers there, but you feel that this is not okay, that the site should not be left like that, that if humans were present, they would be in harm's way. She's basically asking for us to document it if it is available. If you live on the 12th floor and you have direct bird's eye view on a construction site and you see something, you see that the scaffold is dangling, or, take photographs. The phone number is here. As the rep mentioned, the little pamphlets are over there. I will also get a little email together, and then maybe the board office can circulate it tomorrow with all this information and the link to the website, so that we all have this information. But it is really critical for this team to gather evidence so that they can actually be successful in their prosecution. So that was a presentation that we received last week at the Land Use Committee. Are there any questions on that? Or comments? Okay. Resolution. So we had one application. It's on page 8. This is an applicant that has been in front of this board numerous times. The previous time they were here was 3 years ago. This is a restaurant by the name of Fogo de Chao. They're located at 31 West 52nd Street, and they are applying for the renewal of a 3-year permit to operate an open-air cafe in a POPS, in a public plaza. So the building is located on 52nd Street between 5th and 6th. And the restaurant basically wants to put some chairs and tables. The main goal of this furniture that they want to install is really for signage of the restaurant. They want to make their presence known. That's really the big goal. But they also want the opportunity to serve patrons if need be. 3 years ago, when they came to us, we actually approved the number of chairs and tables, but we wanted them to make those tables not specific for patrons and not reserved for patrons. We believe that these tables and these chairs should be open to anyone, and that, but they should have the right to serve patrons, but they should not be for exclusive use of patrons. So 3 years ago, they agreed, but then we wanted these stipulations to be binding in such way that we wanted the Department of City Planning to be on board with that. And the Department of City Planning basically said, we actually don't have the tools in the toolbox to hold an applicant accountable to those types of stipulations. We can't ask them to. There's nothing in the zoning resolution that allows us to do that. Now, you guys do whatever you want. If the community board wants these chairs to be open to the public, you can negotiate directly with the applicant. And if the applicant is agreeable to those terms, then they can do it and then can commit to you, community board, directly. And then the applicant said, well, you know, given that city planning can't really be in the loop, we're not going to do it. So for 3 years, they basically had these chairs and tables, and they were technically open to anyone, but given that there was no signage to say so, and given that, you know, most likely that, you know, they have wait staff that is, you know, near these tables in case someone wants to become a patron and order food or beverage, it is much less inviting to members of the public. So now that we understand that the Department of City Planning cannot be part of this equation, we were like, okay, all right, so we're not going to do this little, you know, 3 people dance. Would you commit to, you know, having those stipulations and abiding by these stipulations with us, and you know, stick with it? And they said yes. So what we're asking them is that A, on principle, these chairs can be used by anyone, patrons or non-patrons. If someone wants to be a patron, it's their right, but if someone doesn't want to be a patron, they're not going to be prevented from sitting or harassed by a waiter who would, you know, come and, you know, shake a menu in front of them. Secondly, there's going to be signage that very clearly states that these chairs are open to the public and that consumption at this particular establishment is not required. And as you can see in your package, so there's a stipulation agreement that you can read, and on page 12 and 13 you have the plan and the layout. And I thought we also had, oh yeah, so on the last page, you have the sampling of furniture and signage that they have to put. So they're going to have to put a sandwich blade that basically states that this is open to the public and that anyone can sit on these chairs. And so the applicant agreed to those stipulations, and we initially voted to deny unless, and we gave them time to go back to the drawing board and, you know, put together a stipulations agreement, and they did, and so now it's a straightforward approval.
Great. Okay. Any conflicts with this application? Any questions to the resolution? Ina?
Sorry, I just have a bunch of questions tonight. I realize that what we're dealing with here is signage and access, but I'm wondering, since they've been there for I used to walk through this, because I worked at the Paley Center down the block for a long time. And what I'm wondering is, now that they've been there 3 years, have there been any questions about congestion? And I'm wondering what the space is between their lamps, which are on the far edge of it, and, you know, and for people to walk past. I mean, how much room is there? And if there's been any problems with congestion in the 3 years they've had the space.
So they are within the property line.
Okay.
So it is not a sidewalk cafe.
Oh, I understand, but it is a pass-through that.
Yeah. Nancy.
You're not in the pass-through.
they're
Under the.
They're in this dark little corner that
Yeah.
That's all that
you
is.
wouldn't want to sit there anyway.
Thank you very much, Nancy. No, I was just trying to figure out exactly where that is, because that can be a very congested area outside.
Yeah, no, and my understanding, I mean, Nancy and Julie did the due diligence, but my understanding is that the area is recessed, and it is not, it's like past the lot line, and it is not interfering with pedestrian flow of traffic.
Okay, any other questions? Any comments? Clayton?
Just that it's another good news reso, mostly because it's great precedent for us in the Department of City Planning to finally get on record that we can do whatever the hell we want between us and an applicant.
Yes. Makes you think maybe something was added to New York City water this month.
I know.
Gosh, it's good, it really is. Okay, that's great. We will take this to a vote.
Weintraub.
Yes.
Webb.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Slutskin. Shapiro.
Yes.
Sadler. Raybar.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
McCall.
Yes.
Mann.
Yes.
Lusick.
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Logasico.
Yes.
Kinsella. Kazner. Kalafarsky.
Yes.
Kabak.
Yes.
Isaacs.
Yes.
Heyer. Harris. Haas.
Yes.
Greeley.
Yes.
Gashow.
Yes.
Goldberg. Gatto. Ford.
Yes.
Gale.
Yes.
Cook. Cook.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Chu. Benzin. Weichman. Atherdale.
Yes.
Akalis.
Okay, the resolution passes. Public safety, quality of life, Nick.
So it's come to my attention that all of the data that PSQL produces was removed from the website when it was redesigned. Typically, we post all of the notices that were received and whatever dispositions the committee arrives at. So that has disappeared. So Vicki wanted me to bring the board up to speed on how we're fixing that problem and what we've been doing. So we're fixing the problem by putting this database back on the website, and we've got some improvements in mind to it as well. But just to keep the board up to date, for example, last month in the December cycle, PSQL received 66 notices of liquor licenses. 48 of those were renewals, 15 of those were new licenses, one was an alteration, like they were moving a bar from one place to another, and one was a class change, say from wine and beer to full liquor. For example, in January, we received about the same number of notices. In January, 22 of those were assigned to the committee to do due diligence on. What that means is that the committee meets with the applicant, they meet with residents, and they evaluate whether there are any issues for the committee to hear at a public hearing. Not all of the issues are as sexy as the one you heard about earlier tonight, where there's fights in the street and we need to accommodate police action against a venue. We do have one additional problematic venue that's coming up for renewal soon. We've already alerted the SLA to not rubber stamp that renewal, that we want to hear that publicly. So we've started the process of meeting with residents, meeting with the operator to see whether they're going to shape up or whether this is going to go to a hearing in which the committee will consider recommending that the SLA deny that renewal. We are meeting with the web designer early next month, and we're looking at some additional functionality. So in addition to listing the 66 addresses that have submitted notices to PSQL in a month, you'll be able to click on if there are any affidavits or restrictions affecting that premises, so that it's all there, and you can see if you have a hotspot in your neighborhood, you can see, well, did they execute an affidavit? What are the restrictions? What are their hours? Things like that. That'll all be available to the public.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? This is a report. Okay, well, thank you, and thank the committee for the work they do, and I think that's it for the evening, so the meeting is adjourned. Good night.
Yes.